I'm James Rule. Welcome to the Lonely Leader podcast, where we help existing and aspiring leaders find clarity, build resilience, drive performance, and enhance fulfillment. Welcome to the Lonely Leader podcast, and today I'm talking about leadership myths, common misconceptions. Now, one of the undoubted pleasures of my work as a high-performance coach is I get to work with a diverse array of clients. I work with individuals, I work with teams in a multitude of sectors in different countries around the world. So I get to see best practice. I get to see things that really energize and optimize people's performance. But I also get to see the challenges that hold people back, that prevent them from realizing their potential. And it's interesting that I've discovered a lot of perceived blocks to people's growth, things that are stopping leaders truly optimize their performance, or indeed, and arguably worse, stopping people from stepping onto that leadership journey altogether. People don't believe they can do certain things because of what I call leadership myths. So today's episode is my attempt to debunk some of those myths. And if you're on the cusp of stepping into a leadership role, I hope it gives you the energy and the confidence to step forward and embrace that opportunity. And if you're already in a leadership role, then I hope it gives you clarity to push some of these potential fears that you may be harboring to one side. Know that they are myths, know that that is your perception rather than the reality, and allow you to continue to grow and develop and truly optimize your impact as a leader. Myth number one. Leaders are old and experienced. Now, without a shadow of a doubt, there is nothing wrong with being on the mature side of the age spectrum and having a lot of experience. But it is not exclusively the requirement that in order to lead people or business that you must be senior in years and worked in a sector for many, many years gathering experience. The world is full of examples of young, impactful, and inspirational leaders that had limited experience when they were thrust into those leadership positions. Sport, particularly, is very, very adept at recognizing that if you're good enough, you're old enough, and it gives people opportunities to be captains of teams on a regular basis. And I see a lot of young people that are fearful of stepping into leadership roles because they feel they're too young or they don't have enough experience. Now, I'm hugely passionate about this because I stepped into my first chief executive opportunity at the relatively young age of 28. So I understand that sense of trepidation. I experienced it myself. But pulling out far more important examples than me, if I look through history, you look at the likes of Joan of Arc, a historically significant figure that led the French forces in the 100-Year War. She was only 17. You look at Mark Zuckerberg, founded Facebook when he was 19 and began leading and continues to lead that organization to this day. If we move into politics, William Pitt was 24 years of age when he became Prime Minister of Great Britain, the youngest ever person to hold that position. He had to manage the country's finances through the Napoleonic Wars, huge amounts of pressure. Did he fold and buckle because he was young and inexperienced? No, he went on to be Prime Minister for 18 years. So age was not a barrier. So for those of you listening that are young or that are relatively inexperienced, that is not a barrier to you being able to step into a leadership position. Purpose and passion is what's really important, and you gather experience on the journey. Myth number two, leaders must have all the answers. This is one of the most frequently expressed fears, challenges that I see leaders wrestling with, and it's one of the most frustrating for me. How can we get into this deluded position that just because we're in a leadership role, we should have all the answers? I always use the analogy of a team. If you look at a sports team, there are people playing a multitude of positions, whatever discipline you want to look at, football, baseball, hockey, rugby, you name it. No one person plays every position on the field. People specialize in their areas. Some are attacking minded, some are defensive minded. Now, if we play that analogy out, why is it when you become a leader that you expect or put pressure on yourself that you should have all the answers? Yes, you should have an overview. Yes, you will have areas where you feel more confident. But the key thing is to build a team. The best leaders build a team around them that's complementary to their strengths and weaknesses. Now, when I was in a CEO position, I recognized I had my commercial acumen. I was good with people. I was good with vision and strategy, but I wasn't a financial specialist. So I made sure I had the best quality financial directors around me. If I look at historical figures that I admire, Abraham Lincoln springs to mind. There's a fantastic book, A Team of Rivals. And as the name of the book suggests, it talks all about how he built his cabinet with a very diverse group of people who were actually quite anti-Lincoln. They were not advocates of him. They'd been keen rivals, and yet he saw fit to gather them around him because he valued their diversity of opinion and their skill sets for the good of the country. At a time of civil war, he wanted that perspective around him. So rather than building this pressure that you must have all the answers, work on your strengths, develop your weaknesses, yes, but build a team around you. You are not expected to have all the answers, but when you build a quality team around you, you will find that between you, you invariably can come up with every answer that you require. Myth number 3, leaders must be fearless. It's a complete fallacy. Everybody experiences fear. We're not robots. The challenge is to find the courage to step forward through your fears. But to expect yourself to be immune to fear is deluded. And I work with leaders that often get down on themselves. They beat themselves up and they're frustrated. Why am I fearful in this scenario? But let's bounce around again. In terms of sport, I talk with a lot of leaders, particularly in contact sports, the physicality that they're going to go through. Of course, there's fear. There's fear of injury. There's fear of underperforming. There's a whole raft of fears around elite sportsmen and women before they compete, but they find the courage to step through that. You step into leaders and teams within the military, and it's a far bigger sense of fear. There's a fear of potential loss of life or serious debilitation and injury. And they find a way to step through that fear. And bringing it back into industry, leaders are no different. There is nothing wrong with feeling fear. The challenge is to focus back in on what you can control and to find the courage to keep stepping forward. Another historical figure that I have a huge amount of admiration for, Winston Churchill, and the leadership, world famous leadership that he provided to the UK and the Allies during the Second World War under enormous pressure. He found the courage to lead and keep moving forward. But when you read about him, you research about him, a lot of this is covered in films now. He had a huge amount of fear. The pressure was always there and the fear was always there, but he found a way to keep moving forward and through that fear. Myth number 4, leadership is a solo journey. My business is called The Lonely Leader. And that is a deliberate nod to the challenge I see behind this myth, that so many people feel that leadership is lonely and isolating. It doesn't need to be that way. And it's imperative, going back to the previous myth about having to have all the ideas, there's a dotted line to this point. You are not an island. You must build a team around you in your organization and indeed outside of that organization. Part of my job as a coach is to help coach and mentor leaders and give them a perspective and a clarity by being able to step away from the day-to-day intensity of their operational role. So I encourage you to find mentors, to find coaches, to find confidants and people that you can express your concerns to, that you can sense check some of your thoughts and ideas. Yes, of course, you can have a leadership team within your organization to do that, but I think it's healthy to have people who are arm's length and outside of the organization. Leadership does not have to be lonely. It does not have to be isolating. The next myth I want to debunk is the notion that leaders are born, not made. Perhaps some people do come out the womb as a natural born leader. But in my experience, the vast majority of leaders evolve. They step into a role, they have some natural passion and purpose, but they build on it through their experiences, their insights, the wisdom they glean from the actions that they take, and they improve and continue to learn and grow as a leader. I think that's a powerful message for all of us. We must never stop learning, and leadership is no different. What actions, steps, tactics do you use to engage with your people? What enhances their sense of value? You'll be constantly learning and revising how you operate. And when you think back to how you led in those early stages of your first leadership role to how you lead today, I'm sure you can see significant differences. And I love to find stories of people that evolve. Sport, one that stands to mind because I've read about him recently and watched a documentary on Netflix, is Michael Jordan. Most of you will know he was cut from his high school team. He didn't just start out as a superstar, but he worked and he worked, and his dedication brought with it leadership responsibilities, and he evolved. Some will criticize that style, some will compliment that style, but he wasn't born that way. It's something that he worked at and he developed. There's a lady I read about, Ursula Burns, who began as an intern at Xerox and worked her way up to becoming the first African-American woman to lead a Fortune 500 company. Was she born a leader, or did she work her way into it and develop and grow? I think you'll find a whole range of examples once you open your eyes and your ears to the notion of people who evolved as a leader. And yes, you look at them now and think, wow, they've got everything buttoned up. They epitomize leadership. I could never get to where they are. But if you get the chance to get close to them and have a physical conversation, or perhaps if that's not reasonable, read about them, learn about them through their autobiographies or papers that people have written about them, you will find that they were not the finished article that you now see when they first stepped into leadership. They evolved and they grew along the journey. The next myth to debunk is the notion that leadership equals authority. If you think that, you're already setting yourself up for failure. It doesn't matter what your job title is, you are not automatically given the respect, the loyalty, and the support of your people just because you've been given a job title. Yes, you're in charge of people, but this notion that I'm the leader, I'm the boss, I've got the authority is antiquated, old school, and it will not allow you to build a high-performing team. You have to earn that respect. You have to build that trust and loyalty through your words and your actions, and people will be inspired by you. People will build a strong sense of trust and faith in you, and then you can truly lead them. But it's a process that has to be earned. It's not an automatic right. You do not have authority just because you've been given a leadership role. And I think that's a very, very important mindset to retain front and center. How do I maintain the trust, respect, and loyalty of my people? Well, you've got to invest in them. And when you do that effectively, all of those traits will be given back to you in abundance. Myth number 6, vulnerability is weakness. Now, I'm not saying that you should lose your head and be running around full of fear, anxiety, and panic. That's not going to inspire the people around you, and it will compromise their faith, trust, and confidence. That being said, you are not a robot, as I said at the start of this episode. All of us have moments where we don't quite feel ourselves, where we may have external pressures, things happening away from work that are weighing heavily on our hearts and on our minds. And it's absolutely right, fit, and proper to have the comfort and the strength to be able to show vulnerability occasionally. I think the challenge is where you show it and how you show it. And I would always advocate building that team of trusted confidants around you and people that you know have really got your back. And that's where you need to go to express the human side, that certain times you will feel more challenged than others. Certain times your mindset will be more disempowered than other times. And again, it's a nod back to the branding of my coaching and mentoring business, The Lonely Leader. Leadership should not be lonely and isolating. If it is, you're doing something wrong. It is imperative that you find those trusted confidants. It might be within the organization, it might be with a coach or mentor like myself outside the organization, it might be a close friend, a partner, it doesn't matter. You need a space where you feel safe and comfortable expressing vulnerability. And the likes of Brené Brown have spoken extensively on this, written around this topic, and high-profile CEOs like Tim Cook at Apple have also talked about the power of being able to show vulnerability. And I think the most high-performing teams connect. They have unity because they genuinely understand each other. They have psychological safety. They're willing to express opinions. They can give and take constructive criticism and feedback. And also, to this point, they can show vulnerability. You are not a robotic group. If you want to be a high-performing team, there needs to be the glue that pulls everybody together, and it's that human side that often acts as the glue. So when you need to express an element of vulnerability, it's perfectly acceptable and okay to do that. Build those confidence, where you feel comfortable and able to do that whenever and wherever you need to do it. And the final myth, leadership is all about results. Now, this might make you roll your eyes or raise an eyebrow, but bear with me. Of course, results are important. We can't just say, well, we fail every day, we don't achieve anything, and I'm a successful leader. What I mean by leadership is not all about results is that there's a process here. You can't just look at the KPIs, the P&L, the balance sheet, and say, I need to be here, and if I'm not, then I am failing. Because that is the outcome of getting the process right. As you've heard me say on previous episodes, you need to have clarity. You need to establish a vision, and you need to ensure that people are buying into it. But underpinning everything is how you make your people feel. You need to get to know them. You need to understand what galvanizes them to take action. You need to make them feel valued. Your actions and words need to inspire them, make them feel appreciated, make them feel like they have a voice, encourage them to open up their creativity, their innovation, allow them to feel comfortable and ensure that there's psychological safety so that they can critique and course correct strategy. And all of those component parts drive the end results. But if you spend your time shuffling deck chairs and looking at results and reordering papers and P&L charts and balance sheets and KPI lists, then you are missing the fundamental job of a leader. Get the best out of your people, the results will follow naturally. So it's a short, sharp hit of myths. I hope this has been helpful. You know my philosophies now. If you've listened to any of the episodes, it's all about reflection. So if any of these leadership myths are holding you back, do not feel that I am judging you. Do not feel downbeat because you're hearing this, go, yeah, that's me. Recognize you're not alone. The reason I'm sharing these is I see them regularly with the clients and teams that I coach. And once you push them to one side, recognize that they're a myth, hopefully it galvanizes you to step forward. If you're a young leader, age and experience is irrelevant. If you are fearful that you're supposed to have all the answers, hopefully I'm helping you debunk that. If you occasionally feel you need to show some vulnerability, but you're uncomfortable doing it, embrace what we've talked about in this episode. I sincerely hope you push past all of these myths and that you optimize your ability and impact as a leader. I wish you the best of luck. Thanks for listening to the Lonely Leader podcast. I'd be very grateful if you could share and follow if the content resonates. And if you're looking for additional free resource to support your continued growth and development, then please do check out our social media and website details in the show notes. Remember, quality leadership on the outside must always start within.